Welcome to part 10 of the Painting a Monster in Substance Painter series. This is aimed at beginners. So in the previous part, in part 9, we painted this emissive lava layer. And in this part, we're going to be refining this. So there are parts of it where I want it to look a little bit better. And there's some edges that could use refined. And we do want to add more to it as we go. But for now, we're just going to refine the edges. So let's bring up the shelf. Window, views, shelf if it's closed. We'll go to brushes. And let's grab this artistic brush. All right, so we have that bad boy. We're going to click on the black mask to paint. So we're going to set it to white to add. And what I want to do, there's some parts I missed, like right here. And then we can reduce the flow down to like 24, should be fine. All right, it's going to take a second. There it goes. Okay. So this brush is a little bit stronger. So one thing we can do is actually add refining edges in, as well as details, while we're filling in parts. So the first part was just getting kind of like a general fill, getting it like started. And now we're going to add like edges in and kind of fill in parts that are like missing. And the nice thing about this brush that we're using right now is that it kind of almost looks like flowing lava as I'm painting this. So like we can add these cool edges that literally look like flowing lava. So now it's adding this nice detail, this transition from the goop guy into this, which looks much nicer than just that. This one we kind of started, but this one we did not at all. So compare this section to that. It looks so much better. It's this nice, adding these nice little transitions helps like sell the material, and it's always good to do. Not always good to do, but it can be good to do. With art, there are rules to certain things, and there are also times to break those rules, and knowing when to is important. But in this case, it makes sense to create a transition because it's like lava is coming out of something. So if it appears to be like pooling up and then flowing down, so it's like it looks like the lava is concentrated here, that looks a little bit better than if it's just kind of just hanging out doing nothing. So it creates a nice transition between the material changes to add some visual interest. And then we can add like streaks. Oh yeah, that's looking nice. These little streaks, especially along the edges, because if we can make it look like it's chiseled in instead of just kind of like feathered in like here, we're going to refine these edges more by erasing parts of this. But for now, we'll just paint in like the outline near the edges. And you want to make sure you're like in the model too. Like you don't want to paint it like here. So you can see here, it kind of, there's like this plane and then there's this plane, and it's kind of like that. So we want to be painting it here. And you don't have to do, like you want to vary your pressure so it's not 100% consistent. That's why we're using a textured brush, so that even if you're pressing down with like the same amount of pen pressure, it'll still have some variation. Especially for things like this, variation is good, because nature is not, it doesn't frequently produce patterns you can see that are like clear and obvious for like rock formations, lava, things like this. Like lava and water and liquids are very organic, and they kind of go with the flow. So in this case, they're traveling along the ridges of this rock. So we could have like it pool up here, for example, then kind of like spread out. But look at this versus this. It's like so clear which one looks better. And I think that definitely adds a lot. So we're going to continue and go through that. Like we're going to continue to go through and add all these. And we will refine parts that look weird, of course. So like this part looks, it could use some refinement. Let's be Increase the brush size a little bit. I'm gonna try to not draw like in straight lines, so I'm gonna try to like draw in like broken lines. Cause like right, actually hold on, let me undo this. Yeah. Let's kind of get like one of those going in. You can also kind of create parts that like bunch up in the flow of the lava. Now this isn't going to be animated, but we can paint in little sections where it builds up. And the nice thing about this is part of this is height map. So the height map is showing through, so it physically will reflect light. Like light will bounce off of it as if it is bunching up. So that's very nice to add. And this is something that you'll be doing if you're hand painting things, where you're adding little details like that in, and it does a lot to add like visual interest in certain areas. And it's all just in the texture too, which is nice. So you don't even have to like sculpt it in. All right, then this part down here, I think we're good. We'll refine the blurry parts. And we'll hit this up a little bit. See where we're at. Okay. I like to see how much time has gone on since the tutorial started. I actually filmed this in OBS if you're curious. Honestly, OBS is really good for screen recording, like for just like recording your desktop. And it's free, so you can't go wrong with that. Similar to my tutorials, it is free. I don't know that I'll ever have paid tutorials. I don't think I'll ever need that. We sell stock models. We have a TurboSquid thing. We just started it recently, and we're still making more models, but I'm also making these tutorials as well. Just saving it. So we'll just go through, basically paint along these edges, and we'll refine it. We'll refine it in two ways. First, we'll build it up, and then we'll hit the other parts of it. So like the outside parts that look kind of unrefined. Because lava is very, what's the word for it? I think viscous is the word for it. Where it's like a thick liquid. So it bunches up and blobs up, and it's not likely to like splatter. Because it's like even water kind of beads up on surfaces. So it's kind of like that, but it's like a thicker liquid. I think viscosity is it. I could be wrong. Definitely let me know if I am wrong. I'm not going to interrupt the tutorial to Google that, but if I wasn't doing a tutorial, I would Google that because I'm always curious about stupid little things like that all the time, where it's like, what is this thing? I can break up the shape, like if something looks too straight and too perfect, I can break it up when I start to pull it in, because I'm going to be inverting this to painting black to hide the some of the details, so we can paint away some of them. This lava kind of reminds me of like the lava in Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Just looks kind of similar to that. It's like really bright and vibrant and colorful, which lava tends to be pretty bright and vibrant. So I think we're doing okay so far. All right, then we have this part. See, I bet you didn't know you were going to be painting lava. I don't know. Everything amuses me. I don't know why. Like, literally everything amuses me. All the time. Okay. Let's get this. The key is like contrast though. Like if everything is the same, like if you paint everything the same color in this case, like if I paint the whole mask, like if I paint on parts that are already raised, you're not going to really notice it. So you kind of want to find parts that aren't if you want to create emphasis. Because emphasis is all about contrast. And that's definitely something that's important to know. So like the reason why we paint midtones, highlights, and shadows is because we're creating differences in color and value. And value is how light or dark something is. So by creating differences between them, the individual details show through. Whereas if everything was similar in color, value, and so on, you wouldn't really see a difference in detail. So because we have a red emissive, an orange color, and a height map, every time we paint where there's really, like if I paint right here, it's red, you know, and crazy, but there's like high contrast. So really it's just like a balancing act of all of these different elements. And there's definitely a massive skill ceiling to it. I'm not even anywhere close to it. I'm still probably what most would like consider maybe on the higher end of beginner or lower end of intermediate for 3D art. So yeah, I still have a long way to go myself personally, but that part of the reason why I wanted to do these tutorials was so that I have to force myself to learn everything, especially things I don't know. Like let's say I know something, like I know like 50% of something about some concept. If I do a tutorial on it, I have to know at least like 90 to, I don't know, maybe even 100% of it, or at least enough, maybe like 80 to 90, because like knowing 100% of everything is pretty difficult to do. But it forces me to actually learn every little thing about some software or to learn specific things, so that as you know, I continue on my own 3D journey, I'm also improving as you're improving following these tutorials if you're an absolute beginner. So I also am learning too. And there might be artists, I mean very likely there will be artists that are substantially better than me at 3D that come across these tutorials. And to those artists, I'll say hello. How's it going? But yeah. You know, someone, even if you think you're the best, there's always going to be someone who's just a little bit better than you. And that's definitely a humbling thing. So it's usually good to not have like an ego about things for like art, and just try to figure out how to create the best result you can and how to improve the best you can. And that's basically what motivated me to even start these videos, was how can I improve at 3D, right? It's like, well, if I force myself to make tutorials teaching all these concepts, then I also have to force myself to learn all these concepts. Now, most of these things I already do know, but there are some that I don't know that I'm going to be investigating and then making videos on. But from your point of view, I'll just appear to know it because by the time I made the video, I've learned it. So, you know, that's how that goes in that way. But yeah, it's definitely pretty enjoyable. Sculpting this little lava guy. He's not the first project either. There's going to be more projects. So if you want to learn how to do specific things, like I'm going to be making videos on like literally everything I can think of for 3D in ZBrush and Substance. I'll even start to like learn Blender more for like you know, sculpting in Blender and, you know, modeling stuff in Blender, because I know how to model to some degree. Modeling is definitely not my strong suit. I'd say sculpting is, but I am going to be learning modeling as I'm doing these tutorials, so that, you know, I'll release some modeling videos where I talk about, you know, modeling, showing how to set up some things, how to do specific things, achieve certain results. Because really that's the important thing, is like getting the steps down and understanding why things are the way they are when you create some 3D model. So like if you want to learn how to model like glasses and, you know, create the frame and all this other stuff, there's a process. There's multiple processes to get to that result, but if you figure out a process that's good, you can teach that process and then use it yourself. So that's kind of, you know, the idea for me, from my point of view, to learn things to teach things, to learn things. So we're just going through the details still. That's why I'm not really commenting on like what I'm doing, because it's just the same. We're just hitting up the edges, painting these in, And we're going to refine them further too. So let's hit up this edge. We're almost done with this pass. And by pass, I mean like, you know, we're doing things in iteration, right? Like we're going through and doing one task. So we're doing like little assignments each video where it's like, all right, now do this thing, this video. So we're almost done with that part of the video, or with this task, I guess. Because if you can break something down into steps, you can reproduce the results, right? And you can learn it. So by going through and doing all these things one thing at a time, you can take every little bit of information from these videos and reuse it for any project. And that's the idea, right? It's not so much I'm showing you how to sculpt some little like lava egg dude. It's more like, here's how you start with a sphere, turn it into this thing. Here are some tools you can use. Here are some, like, you know, procedures you can use to get to this result. All right, I think we've come full circle, and we've got this result now. So we've refined the edges on the inside. Now let's refine them on the outside. So all we have to do, very simply, this process will probably be much faster. Invert this, and now we'll have this hard edge, because it's a relatively hard edge, to start refining this in. And you might need to scale it up a little bit and kind of paint like here to kind of push this in to create a nice distinct separation between the lava and the rock. Now you can have cracks of detail, and we are going to add that. We're gonna get a little into the weeds, but we're gonna do it slowly. So I'm not gonna like jump in and start doing crazy things. It'll just be very incremental. We'll incrementally get into the weeds so that you don't have to like panic or like, oh my god, what, you know, I missed something. What did he do? It's like, this video we're doing this thing, and that's it. And it's really that simple. And we'll do that for everything, and like even the advanced guides. The advanced guides will link back to the basic guides if you haven't done those. And then if you have done them, then it'll be like, all right, here's what we're doing in this video. This basic thing. And then we'll iterate on it, you know, we'll make it a little bit more difficult or add some tweak to it. But what am I doing? I'm painting on a mask. That's what we've been doing the entire time. So that's like the idea, right? Just keep it simple. Keep it simple and reproducible. So all I'm doing right now is just painting black on a mask. And then refining edges. And that's it. That's all you gotta do for this video as part of the tutorial. And the nice thing about this is it's like the more you do it, the better you'll get, right? The more precise you'll get, the faster you'll get. Speed is usually effort over time with, usually you want to like understand what you're doing like at a really deep level or really good level, and like before you focus on speed, and then start to slowly pursue speed so that when you hit like snags and you don't know what you're supposed to do and you need to like go figure it out, then you're not like, you don't like trip over yourself, so then you're like slow and methodical still. Because if you try to rush ahead, I think that's kind of the problem. Haste makes waste. That's a saying. So if you don't like plan things well, if you just kind of like rush in and just try to do something quickly without understanding what you're doing or what the plan is, then it can usually backfire, or it will usually backfire. Now you can get really good and get really fast. Don't get me wrong. You can get insanely good and you can get insanely fast. That is a thing you can do. But when you're starting out, that shouldn't be what you're focusing on at all. I think you should focus on like learning the steps, reproducing certain results, focus on the process, and then just keep iterating and the more you do it, you can start to push yourself to become faster. That is definitely something you can do. But you should definitely do it like 20 times or so before you try to like make it faster. And you also have to make sure that like if you're doing a faster version of some process, it doesn't like sacrifice quality at some point, because that's always a risky run too. Because sometimes even I'm tempted to like just like, oh, let's just use like a smart material and just like slap it on there and call it a day. But knowing how to hand paint and achieve like specific results definitely can get you, in a lot of cases, better results than just using a smart material. Now, there are some really good smart materials. And if you're really good at using smart materials, you can also get like similar results to what we're doing today. But it's just a different skill, I would say. Alright, let's refine these a little bit more. I want to create breaks in any parts that look like they're just straight lines, so like stuff like this. Create little breaks in there. Because lava shouldn't be straight, right? It's like, you know, going inside of like the shells of this egg dude. So it should be kind of chaotic, a little crazy. A little hard to control, even. Alright, we're almost done with the bottom. And the cool thing we can do later is add like cracks of lava after we get more details added in. That's something we can always do. Let me refine this a little bit. Let's have this push in slightly. Actually, not that much. Maybe like down here more. Because we have this existing geometry, right, that we sculpted earlier. Or if you didn't sculpt it from the ZRush thing, and you downloaded it, you can just see where the geometry is. But we sculpted that in. So we want to see it. It also helps us figure out where we need to refine, which is nice. It kind of does a lot of the work for us. Takes out some of the guesswork of where things should go. Alright, so the bottom I think looks pretty good. Now we just need to refine the top. And maybe I should blend. I see a part I want to blend right here. So let's increase this and just kind of go like this a little bit. A little bit more. Alright, I like that more. Alright, then we just need to do the top. Any parts that are too rough need some refinement. Especially if they're overlapping parts of the edge, they shouldn't be, like here. And I'm just scribbling in here. This is a wrist movement. I should probably start calling that out. So like, because like this is like arm. This is from my elbow, and then like this is like wrist, and then this is like fingers. So like let's like draw that really quick. So I'm gonna invert this. So like here's like from my elbow to the stylus moving, nice smooth line, or smooth curved line, and then this is wrist, and then this is like finger, like just my like fingers moving. So it's good to know those. It's good to know when to use certain things. I'll make a separate video about that. That's like a painting thing, I think. But it still applies to sculpting and hand painting, because we are still painting. Even if it's on a 3D model. If anything, maybe it's a little bit harder. Maybe it's easier, I don't know. Comment below. Maybe it's easier, maybe it's harder. I guess it depends on what you're better at, what you have more experience in doing, but I could see either one. I could see how 2D could be harder, and I could see how 3D could be harder. Oh, whoops, I'm erasing right now. My bad. That is something you can do. Is erase, but we don't want to like a thing that's that strong. Let's dig into this a little bit. I'm gonna switch this up. And one way you could add cracks would be like something like that, maybe. You have to be pretty careful to get the details looking good, but it's one way you could do it. If you find it too hard to find the edges because of the glow effect, you can always turn it down. So you can just go to emissive intensity and just lower it. So, I actually like it on because it's like closer to what the actual result will be. So I don't mind it, but if that's bothering you, you can turn that down for sure. Alright, we're almost there. It's where we need to be. At least for the lava. So this is almost to the point where we want it. I can push in there a little bit just to kind of break that shape up slightly. Okay, let's look at that. That looks okay for now, that part. I'm going to save it and then continue on. I will show how to add this, like to import this into Unreal and Unity after this, and how to export it for different things. Because one thing that I had a hard time with when I first started learning all this stuff was just finding a process from start to finish, getting from ZBrush into a game engine. And now that I know the basic process, I will share that with you. Because I wish I would have had that when I started. It would have been so nice just to know like what to do. And that's kind of another like motivator for making these videos, was it's like make tutorials that I would have wished I would have found when I first started, to like demystify some things and to clear some things up. Just gonna save it again. I see one spot that I want to refine, and then I'll move on to the next vein. Yeah, just right here. All right, let's rotate around. And you can move the light, because the light, so like in emissive, the emissive color will show in the dark, but then the light, the actual color will show. So when the light hits this, you can see the orange. Otherwise, it's just like red. So that's something to take note of. And you can have multiple emissive colors too, right? Like you could have a red and orange and then paint two different layers, red and orange, so that you have different emissive popping off of each. If you wanted that result, that is something you can do. Reduce the brush size and try to break apart this shape a little bit. Okay. We got this bad boy over here. And we can always refine these edges more as we go and balance them. Like the reason why you want to work in fill layers with masks is so that you can make changes and edits as you go. So if something doesn't work, if you want to change a color, if you want to increase or decrease the height on some layer, it's all fully editable. So that's like the main takeaway. That's why we're only working in fill colors or in fill layers, because of the flexibility to make iterations. Or say, for example, we wanted to make a different version of this guy that's completely different color palette, you know, like with like purple lights and all this other stuff. You could easily do that because everything is just a fill layer that can be edited. So huge upside for editing things and, you know, having control of your work just by using that, you know, structure. All right, I think we're almost there at the edge. We have this guy. We have 2 of these. I think these are the last 2. And then we'll check out the result, because right now we're kind of zoomed in, taking it all in, one brush stroke at a time. It's a little joke for you there. All right. Just gonna refine it quickly now. And we can add cracks like to this stuff. And the one way to add like volcanic cracks would be to paint in the height first and then do the color after to kind of like shape where the cracks are gonna go. That would be a good way to do it. Oh yeah, I'm erasing again. Sometimes I instinctively erase because I'm used to doing that. But this result is better because it's smoother. Using the brush and just like painting on the mask. Now you can obviously take the eraser and adjust the flow and stuff too. So you can also use the eraser. But it is easier just to work from the same tool to some degree. There's no really huge up or downside like for doing one versus the other. It's like you can use the eraser to take away and the brush to add. That's totally fine. Actually, I think if I flip my Wacom stylus, it just switches to the eraser. So, but it's much easier just to like go over here than to flip a thing, or to like, you know, hit a key to like switch to eraser. So there's also that fact. Hitting E is faster than flipping your brush physically, you know, it's instant. Something to consider. All right, this is the last ridge, and then we'll check out the result. I think it's looking pretty good though. Especially considering it just started off looking like, you know, just a blob of whatever. I think it's starting to get some personality. It's coming into its own. And you can see something here that's accidental, where I didn't fill this in all the way, but you can erase parts of it to make it, to like blend it in an interesting way. Because one thing about lava to know is that it's like flowing molten rock. So there are like grays, like dark grays in lava. So like when it's flowing, you'll see like, you know, things being melted and liquefied in it. So right now we just have the red and the orange aspects of lava. But you could add like molten details, which I think we will do. As for like, we'll do like finishing touches. We'll do finishing touches on each segment, on each section of the model. All right, here we are. So the edges are much more refined now. The lava itself is way more detailed because we painted in these lines and edges. So let me zoom in so you can see a little bit better. Oh, it's saving. All right, there we go. And overall, it just looks more polished and refined. So we're starting to get a pretty decent result, I think. And we can always refine the edges more and add like cracks and little details in there. And we are going to do more with the inside. For now, I just wanted to focus on the lava because I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun, you know, it's a pretty fun little detail. That's it for this one. I think the lava's at a good spot for now. We can move on to probably adding more detail to the shell, like some cracks and breaks in it. We'll mostly just be painting with height, maybe a little bit of color and some roughness for variety. And then we're going to go back to the inside of the guy and add some cool details, maybe like a purple emissive thing for like the inside of the mouth and stuff and the eyes. And we'll start to maybe add some lava specks on the actual goopy part. So we'll play around with it a bit, see where it takes us. And yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you are following along this series and you're enjoying this and finding this useful. Drop a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in part 11.